your shift. I know it's been very late. It's the last session of the day. Um, I'd like to talk to you about something that I've grown to be increasingly passionate about, and I've seen to be very useful among engineers building APIs. I think before that, I'd like to to say that the key outcomes for the concept I'm about to talk about, if implemented properly, will reduce your time to market and is going to significantly improve how engineers, both in the business and I guess your shared platforms, collaborate. And it's really going to improve how they generate and build APIs. On the origin of how this idea came about, I was incredibly blessed to have played a part in the NPP program. This was 2016 to 2018, a 3 year program, incredibly complex. But look, when all of us, when we work on a project, on an initiative, right, we seek things that we really love. To me, the three key things that I look after in any initiative I work for is one, is the initiative going to deliver real business value? And in the case of NPP, we're really transforming the payments industry there from batch overnight uh, payments to real time. Within one bank to the next, within 10 seconds, you could get your payment, and also it would support Australia's 24 by 7 economy. So take their technology. I really love, I guess, learning, improving on new technology. And this one was, you know, the learnings was immense, right? From Docker containers, CI/CD, deploying complex workloads across 3 data centers. It was from every every shape and form, right? And I really love that. And thirdly was in terms of, I guess, long lasting connections. I really don't like to come to work in an environment where we've got great colleagues. We're enjoying the time we're spending together. And I was again blessed there to have met people that I still meet with today, and we we had incredibly strong disagreements at times, but we're still friends, and we catch up every time I need to bounce an idea off them. We still get together on that. Right. Despite all those complexity in that program, right? I think one of the things that really struck me was, I guess, the simplicity of consumption. We didn't kind of tell the customers, look, we use Docker or we use container orchestrators. This is why they should start using NPP. No, we made it really simple, right? Like, it was a mobile number or an email, and you can start using the service. Now, in the world of today, like, it's really key to get this right, and we really need to start learning from the business, right? For our own technology offerings. In this particular case, like, I'm acting both as a service provider to my 150 payments engineers to make sure that they can focus, right? So to me, it was really key to understand that using the same principles, how do I make sure, I guess, the customers get, is it something that they need? Is it something that they want? And is it something that's simple to understand, right? So if you don't get these parameters right, obviously, customers don't will not buy your product. Now, again, translating that to my scenario there, me being the payments engineering lead in payments, right? How do I make sure that anybody building APIs are able to do their job well? And when there came the time we were building the first API, we realized, okay, great, you're going to get the requirements. What is it we need to build? But in a large organization, you have to ask quite a lot of questions to quite a lot of number of people, right? And look, we had clear time frames. Like, on a regulatory program, you don't go live on time. It's not a good to have, right? You start paying fines every month. So it was really key to understand those business constraints. And as we were kind of building the first one, again, like, all those questions were adding to the time frame. It was very clear to me that to be able to scale and build all the APIs we needed to go live, I couldn't, I guess, take the same time, and it was really key for me, I guess, to capture the learnings. Initially, it was just in documents. Look, we need to talk to this team, we need to document this, we need to engage this team in this way, and there's a lead time of 2 months. So clearly, if we had to repeat the same process every time, we would not be supporting the business in going live on time. Right. I guess, in large and medium enterprises, people understand what I'm talking about, right? If you're a startup, all those questions probably is coming to one person. There's a single department doing logging, monitoring, cyber, and everything, right? You have you have the, I guess, the control within a small team, even one person. But in medium and large enterprises, the complexity builds up with not just the questions, but the number of people, number of teams you need to talk to, right? And with the silos, it becomes your team's, I guess, effort to kind of piece things together. Okay, to do logging and monitoring, I need to talk to this team, and here's how it works. And then write that in your code. What is the guardrail that they're asking, the guidelines they want you to follow, right? Same with operations, same with cyber. Everybody has their own guardrails, in terms, usually it's documents that they tell you, here's the 10 things you need to do to be compliant. And this is what you need to be able to go live, right? So we had a lot of this. And again, adding to the effort, right? Now, this is just a slide to wake the geeks up. I know, people like to see a bit of code, and you can see in the room, people will be linting, and that's not the point of this. I'm going to explain a bit how this will help if you're able to codify this, right? If you're able to see how each of these steps, each of those guardrails actually increase the time to market, right? And this actually can be used in the planning, part that I'll talk later on. I think also, the energy of the bank, like, the enterprises, the way we tend to see it is that, look, number one is we need to build things. Number two is, we need to report if things are built in the right way. And I felt there's a lot of effort we, in large enterprises, we spend on seeing and reporting how things are non-compliant, right? And I always thought, look, it's great we're reporting on those, but it'd be really helpful if everybody contributed on the build side a bit more. Not saying that any of those guardrails or reports are not necessary, right? But to me, it was very clear that when my team was building, we need to go live, we wanted a bit more contribution effort from teams around us to help us, right? And not just, I guess, report against that, or I guess give us additional guidelines in terms of long documents we need to read through, right? And if I was to kind of say, like, the amount of energy translates to dollars, right? So it's really clear there's a need for us to, I guess, work a bit closer together between guardrail owners, reporting team, and the build team. Now, this is where I start introducing the concept of Giftrail, right? We're very clear in terms of building, like, how do we measure code coverage? What tool do we use? And what is the acceptable threshold, right? I don't think we've done enough in terms of defining the quality of guardrails itself. Obviously, different teams and platforms have this documented in text, but I think we really need to go and ask beyond the text now. Great, you're telling me that this is what I need to do, but to make sure we're looking at the business in terms of a profitable, I guess we all want the business to make profit. What would be really interesting is that, yes, you provide me the guidelines, the guardrail. Next thing, explain clearly the rationale. That's, let's call it, maturity level 2. But the real value is that if everybody was actually providing the toolkit to actually help us comply, right? Think about it. You're the expert. You're the team that owns that domain, logging, monitoring, API, gateways, etc. Don't just write the guideline. provide the toolkit to comply. So within day one, what I wanted was actually my team to have all the Giftrails they needed to comply. They're starting by being compliant and not, starting from a low base, starting from a high base, right? I guess now what I wanted to say, look, obviously that's a concept, but to make it successful, it's not overly complex what we need to put in place, but really having those in place would make that implementation of the Giftrail successful, right? Number one is having a clear traceability in architecture. What is it you're providing, right? So some of the use case that you'll be building are in most cases repeat APIs or API structures that you'll be building, right? Is it simple API to DB connectivity, or more complex, or different scenarios? We're talking one API platform or generation to the old generation of APIs. Like all of these, you won't be building one of them, you'll be building multiple of them, right? So once you've identified those patterns, it's important, I guess, to codify them. And look, that's the build side, but also the deployment side. You might actually have various deployment mechanisms, but really important, I guess, to make sure you patternize them as well and encapsulate them so that not every single engineer in the bank, in an enterprise, is actually asking those questions again and again. How do I, make sure I deploy to what platform? Like, all these questions take time, and, is just increasing the load of the engineers. Number two is, how do we distribute? Like, again, using that NPP, abstraction there as a base. I really wanted to see, look, how do I distribute these Giftrails to the engineers so they can, use them seamlessly? They don't need to ask 10 questions before they use them as well, right? And look, I didn't invent anything here. This is, Maven archetypes and .NET templates have been there for years, right? I've just used them, again, like jars, scripts, Docker files, etc., is what becomes the Giftrails. But then for them to consume it, it's a simple command. One line, and you get all the necessary Giftrails and guardrails implemented, right? You don't need to focus on how I'm going to do authentication, authorization, logging, and monitoring. You can actually see it on day one. And really key there for the, I guess, guardrail owners to be a part taken there in defining and implementing those Giftrails, right? So if you've got a logging and monitoring team, you can see how you can replicate the complexity organization and simplifying with those toolkits. So if you've got teams that operate in silos, logging and monitoring, and let's take these examples to start with, or deployment, they can provide these toolkits that can be versioned and deployed based on how the teams actually operate, right? And every time there's a new release of the archetype, the engineers can actually consume the latest version and build the API with the relevant fixes from the previous ones, right? But it's really a collaboration here. In some cases, guardrail owners and engineers will actually be producers and consumers of those templates and archetypes. In my case, it was kind of the case, because I'm also a service provider, but I also build APIs, right? So I had to make sure that, whatever I'm defining here, my engineers can consume, right? I think the next discipline that you need to put in place, again, I think engineers love that, to make sure that whatever they're producing is helpful to other engineers. We love that, right? To have kind of an open source or inner source community. Every time somebody is going to find a performance issue, and believe it, like when you're building microservices, you're going to find lots of things, right, that go wrong, whether in load testing, production, or even dev. But every time you find a fix, very important to add this fix back to the Giftrail, right? So all the APIs that get generated, once you find the fix, make sure the engineers feel a sense of ownership on the Giftrails there, and implement the fixes so that the next 10 APIs, the next 20 APIs you build, have those performance fixes, incidents fixes within, I guess, the Giftrail, right? I think, look, I've had experience with not just building code and architecting, but also in terms of planning. And I've realized one thing, right? Using planning as a motivation tool is really important. So with business, the top level, if you think about business engineers who are actually delivering products to real customers, you also have the engineers in central teams providing a service to this business engineer, right? So sometimes you get asked, to fix a script, to do a CI/CD pipeline or a framework, but you don't really understand how this is contributing to what the business or the business engineer is going to use it for, right? So to me, you remember those, I guess, 60 days that I had codified there. Now, once you define or you captured how long it takes you to build an API, let's kind of baseline it. But then make sure this is transparent to all the different teams into how they can contribute to reduce those days and help the business engineer really be productive, right? And allow them, I guess, to define, look, within their capability, what is it they can do? What is it they can do to reduce those time, right? And really help the business in I guess, reducing the time to market overall. If this gets solved for one engineer and you've got thousands of engineers within your company, this is thousands of man hours that you're solving for here, right? Obviously this equates to dollars. Now, I think one of the important things as well here is to have constant feedback on how the end-to-end is working, because again, in companies that have a lot of silos, you can quickly optimize locally, but globally you're failing, right? So having coding enterprise architects there who are trying to build the API and providing that feedback and I guess guiding all those teams to build towards the collective is really important. So one archetype, one template that everybody's contributing, and then it might actually not work well, like if you don't have that view of how are they integrating, right? If you're releasing a feature that's broken the archetype, it's also important there to have that coding enterprise architect there to provide that feedback, right? Like, look, this works here, or this doesn't work, and here's how we're impacting the business engineer, right? Look, simple culture hacks as well, like innovation days, or somebody mentioned earlier that it'd be great to have swags. Their company gives swags, to reward engineers who are contributing there. But I think the biggest one is really to have guardrail owners start building end to end, right? It's really valuable, the kind of feedback you get when you kind of eat your own dog food in a way, right? And most of the people who work in the silos, right? They obviously are optimizing locally, but they have never tried to build an API end to end. So kind of giving people the opportunity, okay, great, we've made new feature releases in central teams. Let's try to build an API and see how easy it is now. Is the 60 days still 60 days, or did we actually make it better or worse, right? So we know beforehand, before the business engineers even tried, like, did we actually make something better, right? Look, I think I'm gonna end this here and leave you with, I guess, we have the Richardson maturity model where they define how mature a REST API is, right? I think it's important to get people to understand as well, look, we have a level of quality for guardrails, right? Level 1 is really, I guess, the start. Number 2, the rationale. And number 3, the Giftrail. We need to start demanding that now from guardrail owners so that they understand their responsibility as well in contributing to making the business profitable, right? Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and thanks for the opportunity.